Fellas, welcome. Just want to see if this is working, obviously. Fellas. Yep. All good. Let's bring that up. And there we go. All right, boys. Welcome to the live stream. I don't know if you guys saw it or not yesterday, but I posted my stream schedule. Officially have a stream schedule. I know I was streaming here and there for a little bit, but officially have a schedule. Every day during the week, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And on Sundays, I will stream at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And for Saturdays, we will do watch along sometimes. Probably not for every card for this upcoming card, UFC 317. I think I will do a watch along, but it's probably going to be for the prelims. And then maybe I'll do another stream after the card's over, recapping the whole thing. But that's what we're gonna do. And if I am going to fully live stream a card, I will let you guys know. But yeah, so we got a few things coming out ever since our last stream. We have some breaking news. First, we have here we go. We have Nassourdine Imavov will take on Caio borralho for the main event of UFC Paris. This was definitely something that I've been wanting. There was rumors a long time ago that the fight was offered to Nassourdine, but he decided to decline it because he thought he should get the title shot next, which I always thought was weird. Let me just let's do this quick. There we go. Let's just put that in chat quickly. But yeah, so it seemed like this fight could have probably happened a while ago, but it seemed like after the Izzy win for Nassourdine, he thought he was going to get the title shot next, and he was willing to wait for that title shot. But now, as it became clear that he's not going to get that next title shot, and Hamzat was going to be the guy, it seems like he's taking the shot or taking a fight against Caio borralho. I think this is a really good fight. I think this is certainly going to be the number one contenders fight. Whoever wins this certainly should get the next title shot. I guess unless Strickus loses and they want to give him an immediate rematch, but most likely this is going to be the number one contenders fight, and whoever wins this is going to be getting the next title shot. So that's a little news that we got last night after we streamed. Also, obviously, this weekend we have UFC 317. I talked about this a couple times in a couple different streams already, but certainly a really good card. A lot of good fights to look forward to. Even recently coming out about Ilia Topuria, he was recently saying that he wants to be a 3-division champ. He wants to beat Charles Oliveira, becoming a 2-division champ, and after he beats Oliveira, maybe he gets a title defense or two. He eventually wants to move up and fight Islam for the belt at 170, which would be crazy if he even attempts that. Nonetheless, if he actually accomplishes that goal, certainly would be a really crazy accomplishment for Ilia Topuria. But obviously, he's going to need to take step by step. The first step for him is Charles Oliveira, which is no easy task. And we'll see how he performs against Oliveira on Saturday night. Obviously, outside of that, we have great fights. Pantoja versus KKF. We have Royval versus Joshua Van. Dariush versus Moicano. Even Talbot versus Felipe Lima is a pretty good fight. Not a ranked fight, but certainly two guys that will certainly put on a show, at least I believe. Then you have Hermanson versus G-Rod. I think that's an interesting one. You have Haider Amil versus Jose Delgado. You have Tracy Cortez fighting, Barashov versus Terrence McKinney. That should be a action-packed one. You have Dumas, you have Deans, you even have Jacob Smith coming off a good performance, undefeated fighter as well. So there's a lot to like about him. And overall, I think we just have a really good card at UFC 317 coming up. Another thing, I know I do this here and there. I don't do it all that consistently, but I just wanted to give out some of the picks that I like for this upcoming week, and obviously no pressure, but if you guys would like to drop a super chat, I would really appreciate that. Obviously, where I'm a pretty small channel at this point, and I'm just trying to grow into the process. But yes, anything will be appreciated, obviously. But I just wanted to give out some picks to you guys. So obviously here we have Nico Price versus Jacob Smith. Jacob Smith is a pretty heavy favorite at this point. I don't think there's really any value there.
These two singles by any chance?
No.
No.
No. Sorry about that. But so anyways, so there's no value really on Jacob Smith. I think he's gonna win. I don't think there's any reason to bet on Nico Price at this point. I think Jacob Smith is gonna win. But so we have that. Then after that we have Deans versus Hines. I think Deans is gonna win this fight, but once again, at minus 310, I don't think there's much value on that. Then we have Dumas versus the newcomer McVeigh. Also, don't really think there's too much value there. I know Dumas has fought in the UFC a bunch of times, but I don't think there's all too much there with Dumas. Terrence McKinney versus Barashov. I think this is an interesting one. McKinney is very athletic. He is very physical, and he does get a lot of first-round finishes, whether that's submission or TKO. But when you look at his record, some of the guys that McKinney has beaten over the years have not been the best fighters. When you look at the combined record of those guys that McKinney has beaten, it's a really, really bad record. So when he's going up against a guy in Borashev who also hasn't had a great record in the UFC thus far, but in my opinion is actually a decent fighter and has good skill, I think there could potentially be value on Borashev here. So this is definitely one pick that I'm check marking or at least thinking about. Then you have Tracy Cortez. I don't think there's much value either way there. Here we have Delgado versus Hyder Emil. I think there's probably some value on Hyder Emil. He's obviously undefeated fighter. There's a lot of good things that he was able to do in some of his recent fights. And when you're getting this guy at plus money, might be value there. But obviously Delgado is a good fighter as well. But yes, this is another one I'd probably check mark, potentially another underdog in Hyder Emil. This fight is the value that I really like. So G-Rod obviously is a really good fighter. He has a lot of power. He has really good jiu-jitsu. And even on the feet, he's improving his boxing day in and day out. And of course, as I said, he has a lot of power with his striking as well. But but the thing is, his movement is not amazing. And I think there's real value on Jack Hermanson. I almost think Hermanson should be the favorite, actually. But you're getting him at plus 158, which is certainly interesting. The reason why I like the value on Hermanson so much is due to the fact that in a lot of his fights, Hermanson does a great job at staying out of danger. He does a great job at utilizing footwork, moving alongside the cage, utilizing leg kicks, utilizing jabs, right straights, essentially staying safe and avoiding power shots of a lot of these fighters that he goes up against. And when you talk about a guy like G-Rod, he's a guy who has success when his opponents are willing to brawl with him. But if his opponents aren't willing to brawl and they're utilizing footwork and they're trying to stay safe, I think G-Rod is one of those guys that's probably going to have issues with that. So I think there's real value on Jack Hermanson in this fight at plus 158. I think he should be the favorite, as I said. So I actually really like that one. Definitely a check mark on this bet potentially. Then you have Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. For whatever reason, I feel like there might be value on Peyton Talbot. He had a really bad performance in his last fight, as he was just consistently getting taken down time in and time again. But at the end of the day, Lima is actually a pretty good wrestler as well, but we'll see how much he wrestles. Lima also has really good striking, and I would assume Peyton Talbot has made some improvements in the wrestling, or at least stopping wrestling, defensive wrestling. So we'll see what happens there. I think there could be value on Peyton Talbot, but at the same time, I think Felipe Lima is a really, really good fighter. So for me, this is probably a pass, but definitely an interesting fight. Should be a really entertaining one outside of any potential bets. Then you have Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. I think there's also real value on Dariush. The reason why I say this is some of the guys that Dariush lost to in the more recent history have been guys that are super athletic. Whether you talk about Charles Oliveira or even Armin Saryukin. And Dariush just wasn't able to deal with the athleticism, with the power that those two guys had. But when you talk about a guy in Renato Moicano, not only is Moicano not athletic, but he also doesn't have too much power. So I think a lot of the issues that Dariush struggles with are not going to be present in this fight. And I think on the feet, Dariush is actually going to have the more power out of the two. And I think on the feet, Dariush actually may be the more technical guy out of the two, or at least the more effective guy out of the two. And on the ground, Moicano has amazing top time for sure if he's able to get it there. But Dariush also has amazing jiu-jitsu and also has a decent ability to stop takedowns as well. So I definitely like the value on Beneil Dariush here, especially at plus money. So that's another one that I'm checking off as a potential bet. This next one, Joshua Van versus Brennan Royval. Van was the underdog essentially the entire week. He was at like a plus 120 the entire week. Now the odds flipped. He's a favorite. I still like the value on Van, and here's why. For Royval, I think obviously he's a lot more proven. He's a number one contender. He's beaten a lot of guys at 125, and Joshua Van is slowly moving up the ranks. But the reason why I like the value on Van here is Van is a guy who's going to pressure you, essentially regardless of who you are. He does a great job at pressuring. Once he gets on that inside, he does a great job at putting combos together. Whether that's putting body shots together, whether that's putting hooks to the head together, Van does a great job at putting combos together. And I think against the guy in Royval, we're going to see Joshua Van essentially implement this game plan very well. And once he's able to get on that inside, and once he's able to put those combos together, I think Royval is definitely going to struggle with that. And I think in the end, we're going to see Joshua Van win by decision. So this is another one that I'm checking off. I do like the value here at minus 128, but obviously, if you were able to get Joshua Van at plus money, that definitely was an amazing bet and great value in my opinion. For Alexander Pantoja versus KKF, I think Pantoja is going to win. Obviously, there's a chance KKF can land a huge shot on Pantoja and finish it from there, but I think Pantoja is going to win this fight. Now, in terms of money line, minus 280, not great value there, but it's a possible parlay piece with one other guy. If you see somebody else on the card that you think is a lock to win, or you're really confident in them. But for me, I'm going to stay away from the money line. But a couple things that I like here. I like Pantoja by submission. If Pantoja is able to get this fight to the ground, I think there's a very good chance that he's able to find that submission. So definitely like the value at plus 230, Pantoja by submission. The other thing that I like is the under. I like the under 4.5 rounds a lot at minus 116. Reason why I like it is over 5 rounds, or really 4.5 rounds, if Pantoja is able to have success, what that would look like is he's probably going to land some shots on the feet and eventually find a takedown. And as I said before, if Pantoja is able to find that takedown, I think he'll be able to submit KKF. But for KKF, if he's going to win, he's going to land a huge shot in the first 2 or maybe 3 rounds. So if that happens, this bet is also going to cash the under 4.5 rounds. So I'm definitely liking that bet a lot, and I like the value there. Now, for the main event, there's not too many things I like. It's probably a lot of shots in the dark, to be honest. I think Ilia Topuria is going to win. I don't think there's any value at minus 460. And also, I don't even think this is a parlay piece. This number is just a little bit too high. Some bets that I potentially like, Charles Oliveira by KO. As I said, I think Ilia is going to win, but maybe you can find some value with Charles by KO at plus 1100. I even think, wow, this line changed quite a bit actually from the last time I checked. But Ilia Topuria via submission was the last one I liked. I just checked this like an hour ago. It was plus 750. Now it's plus 650. So this line moved quite a bit. But this is another line that I potentially may like. Obviously, I don't think this is the most likely outcome, but just taking the value here may be worth it. Maybe Ilia is able to hurt Charles, get him to the ground, and then find a submission not too long from there, similar to what Islam was able to do. But as I said, both of these bets, either Charles by KO or Ilia by submission, both of those bets are kind of shots in the dark, and you're really just playing value. The one thing that I do kind of like, though, is under 1.5 rounds at plus 114. I think this is going to be a short fight. I think both of these guys are going to look to move forward, and I think getting plus money on an under for this fight is probably a decent move. Now, outside of that, obviously, that's the card. And let's full screen this. So yes. So yeah, those are my predictions for this upcoming card. I definitely, let me turn the lights. Sorry, guys. Sorry, boys. But yeah, so those are my predictions, and those are the bets that I like for this upcoming card. There definitely is pretty good value, I would say. A lot of underdog value on this card, even some prop value on this card. There's definitely a lot to like, at least in my opinion. But obviously, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens in a lot of these matchups. Um, as I said, definitely am excited to see what happens. I think this card overall is going to be really good. I think there's a lot of fights that are going to be fun, and we'll see. Oh, what's going on, Joshua? Lot A, lot of what? A lot of fights to look forward to. But what's going on, brother? But yeah, so should be a really good card in my opinion. We'll see what happens. A lot of good fights this week. I'm excited. Yes, me too, Joshua. I'm excited as well. I think we're in for a really good fight. John, what's going on, brother? John's a little bit nervous at this point. You nervous for Charles, or what are you nervous about? Um, but yeah, I mean, we shall see. Obviously, very ambitious from Charles Oliveira. He really want, or not from Charles Oliveira, from Ilia Topuria. He wants to beat Charles in the first 2 rounds. And then after that, he wants to potentially move up and be a 3 division champion, which would be kind of crazy. I think he probably would and probably needs to. He probably needs to fight at least once at 155 or get one title defense once at 155, but we'll see what happens. John's a Charles Oliveira fan. Yeah, me too. I talked about this before, but I really like both guys. I'm an Ilia fan and I'm a Charles fan as well. I think Ilia is going to win this fight. I think there's more paths to victory for him, but I was a little bit not so happy that this fight got put together because I'm such a fan of both of these guys, and I don't want to see Charles Oliveira get knocked out, and even for Ilia, I don't really want to see him getting knocked out either. So we'll see what happens in this fight, but yeah, definitely should definitely be a good one. I think there's going to be a lot of action, and we'll see who the undisputed 155-pound champion is come Sunday night or Saturday night, going into Sunday. The champion has a name. Let's go, Joshua. My boy, you have Charles Oliveira winning. What do you guys think? Let me know. Let me know. But yeah, I mean, should be good. Obviously, just the other day, at this point, it's already old news, but obviously John Jones retired. We have the heavyweight division opening up a little bit more again. Obviously, with the Imavov fight being announced, we also have the UFC France card that got announced. Obviously, we knew they were going to France. They go to France every year, but yeah, so that's another announcement. I was kind of hoping that they did Tom Aspinall versus Surreal Gone in Paris. I mean, obviously that fight doesn't have too much excitement to it, but at least if you were to put it in Paris, the crowd would be great. At least we know that for sure. So that could have been a good fight. And you have Imavov and Caio borralho under them. That would have definitely been a really good card. But it seems like that's going to be a fight night, so they're not going to put a pay-per-view on it. What's going on, brother? UFC 319 prediction. Is that Hamzat versus DDP? Let me just double check. I think that is though. 319. Yes, it is. Prediction. I think it's really close. The first round's going to determine that fight for Hamzat and DDP. I can't honestly. It's very close to a 50-50 fight for me. I know Hamzat is a decent favorite. For me, honestly, I think there's a real chance DDP may win that fight. He just needs to survive round one, which I think he could. I don't think he's going to stop takedowns round one. I think he's going to get taken down. But if he's able to put up a fight, maybe make Hamzat work a little bit in the first round, and even if he does get taken down, just stay safe. Don't get submitted. Don't get ground and pound finished. Once you get into that second round against Hamzat, the fight's going to get a lot easier. Hamzat's probably going to gas, at least to an extent, even in round two. Maybe he's not going to be completely gassed in the second round, but he's going to be a lot more tired than he was in round one. So I think if DDP is able to make it out of the first round, I feel very good about his odds. But obviously, round one, Hamzat's probably the best fighter we've ever seen. Honestly, I can't recall too many guys being better than round one Hamzat. Very, very he's very, very dangerous in that fight. But if I had to give my official prediction for you, I think I lean DDP, and I lean fourth or fifth round finish for DDP. That's my early prediction. But we'll see what happens in the fight. Obviously, as I said, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Khamzat's able to find that first round finish. If Khamzat doesn't get that first round finish, I don't think he's going to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if he is able to get that first round finish. Joshua, unfortunately, I think Ilia wins. Charles leaves a lot of openings, but should be great while it lasts. Yeah, I completely agree. That's kind of what I feel. I think Ilia is just a little bit too tight on the feet. His power is just too much, and his technical ability is also too much. The way he's able to put combos together, I think he'll eventually be able to find Charles. And as you said, Charles is pretty open on the feet. I think as his career has progressed, he's gotten a little bit better. He moves his head a little bit more than he used to. He's a little bit more defensively sound than he used to be. And maybe that improvement can help him avoid shots against a lot of guys. But I don't think Ilia is one of those guys. I think Ilia is just a little bit too technical, and eventually, as I said, I think he'll be able to land. And if he is able to land, I don't know if Charles is going to be able to take that power. Maybe he's able to take one shot, but if he takes more than one, I'm not so sure. And I kind of do think Ilia is going to be able to find a finish within the first 2 rounds. Obviously, as I said, it's possible that Ilia lands a big shot, drops Charles, but Charles is still there. And Ilia then goes for a submission and gets it. It's possible, similar to what we saw between Charles and Islam. But if I had to give my official prediction at this point, I certainly would lean towards a Ilia Topuria TKO or potential KO. But yeah, so that's what I feel with that fight. Once again, thank you guys for being here. As I said, if any of you guys were joining in late, I officially have a stream schedule set up for you guys. Every day during the week, I will be streaming 8 p.m. Eastern time, so definitely be sure to check to be here if you guys are interested. I will be listing my live streams early so you guys can get a little bit of an advance notice, and maybe you can even there's a button you can press to get a reminder when I actually go live. So I'll be streaming every day during the week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and on the weekends I will be streaming on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Now for Saturdays, for certain cards, I will be doing watch parties for certain cards, but I'll let you guys know in advance if I will be doing that. For this upcoming card, UFC 317, I will be doing a little bit of a watch along with you guys for the prelims, but unfortunately for the main card, I will not be. I will have to jump off stream for that point, but probably after the card is over, I can hop on live stream again and do a little bit of a post-fight analysis and discuss the fights with you guys. But that's my schedule. What else we got here? By the way, I just also want to thank you guys a lot for the support lately. I really appreciate everybody joining the streams. Even view counts is starting to get a little higher, and I'm just really enjoying the process of making videos, doing live streams, just being a little bit more in contact with you guys, and it certainly has been a really, really fun time for sure. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about UFC 317? What are some fights? What do you guys think for Pantoja KKF? Who do you guys got in that? For me, I have Pantoja. I think he'll be able to land shots even on the feet, and I think eventually he'll be able to get a takedown. And if he does, I think it's very dangerous territory for KKF, and I think Pantoja will eventually be able to get a submission if the fight does go to the ground. But yeah, what do you guys think about that fight? Sorry. But yeah, that's definitely should be a really good one. What else we got here, boys? Obviously Royval versus Van. We talked about that a bunch of times. I think the pressure of Van is going to be big. And I think Van eventually will be able to find that finish. But yeah, I mean, definitely some really good fights upcoming this weekend. We'll see what happens. And I think even after these fights happen at 317, there's going to be a lot of movement and a lot more clarity to where the UFC is going to go from there. Obviously, if Ilia wins, who's Ilia going to fight after that? He's probably going to have to fight at 155, at least one title defense. Even if he wants to move up to fight Islam potentially at 170, I think he's going to need to fight at least once at 155. So we'll see what happens there. Who his next opponent could be or would be. Maybe you get a Ilia versus Arman Tsarukyan, something like that. And Ilia versus Gaethje, I don't think is very likely. Maybe you have Ilia versus Patty. I was talking about that. I think that would be a really good fight for the UFC to put together. If Hamzat Scrapley, let's see, let's put your comments on the screen here. Go. If Hamzat Scrapley wins second round like he did against Burns Usman, it could be 2-2 heading into the fifth. That is true. That definitely is true. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be totally shocked. I mean, as I said, I think if DDP is able to make it out of the first round, he's going to have a lot of success. But I wouldn't be totally surprised if Hamzat's able to find another round. I'm almost banking that that Hamzat's going to win round one. It's very, very likely that he does. And yes, outside of round one, would he be able to pick up at least one more round within the first four? Maybe. Yeah, maybe he will be able to. Maybe he'll utilize some wrestling. Maybe he'll utilize his even his striking is not bad. Maybe a little his jab right straight, can switch stances. So yeah, it could be 2-2 heading into the fifth. But at that point, even if it is 2-2 heading into the fifth, I do like DDP's chances. It would be interesting to see how potentially tired Hamzat is at that point going into the fifth round. It would be the first time that he's been in the fifth round in his entire career. And especially against a guy like DDP who really pushes it a lot. It would be interesting. If I had a ticket, I probably would be leaning with DDP at that point, or would be happier with a DDP ticket going into that fifth round, even if it was 2-2 as compared to a Hamzat ticket. But of course we will see. What else we got? We have Joshua Lee. I was thinking about I'll probably just throw your guys' comments up there so everyone can see it. Joshua says Ilia versus Arman would be awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would be a really good fight. I think Ilia wins in the end, but it would be really interesting to see how he would deal with the wrestling of Arman Tsarukyan. On the feet, Arman is dangerous. He has a lot of power. He is really athletic, but I wouldn't say he's the most technical striker in the world. And I think on the feet, that's where Ilia is probably going to want to be. He's going to have more success. He's certainly the more polished striker. Even though Arman does have good power, I think Ilia's power is better. And obviously, he's more technical with the strikes he throws. So it really makes his power even more damaging for Ilia. But it would be interesting to see how Ilia deals with the wrestling of Arman Tsarukyan. Even a guy in Charles Oliveira had some issues with Arman's wrestling. Even Islam, to an extent, when they fought the first time, a little bit to an extent, had issues with Arman's wrestling. So it would be interesting to see how Ilia deals with that. But my official prediction for that fight is I would be leaning with Ilia Topuria in that fight. Honestly, the way I see Ilia is just he's got a lot of guys covered either everywhere or he has them covered in a lot of different areas. There are certain guys that he's better than them on the feet and on the ground. There's other guys that he's better than them on the feet but not on the ground. Or even there's some other guys that he's better than them on the ground but not the feet. But that's very unlikely. I think Ilia's probably has the best boxing in the UFC. But I guess my point is, against almost anybody you can talk about, Ilia has his opponent covered somewhere. Like, for example, let's look through the rankings. Let me pull this up quickly. Sorry. Like, for example, for Arman Tsarukyan, I think Ilia has him covered on the feet. For Charles Oliveira, I think he has Charles covered on the feet. And even Ilia's wrestling would be interesting to see how that fares against Charles. Against Justin Gaethje, I think Ilia is honestly better on the feet, but he definitely has Gaethje covered on the ground. If that fight goes to the ground, I think it'll be a short night for Ilia. I think he'll be able to find a submission, maybe even ground and pound shots, and he'll be able to beat Gaethje. For Max Holloway, I think on the ground, Ilia has Max Holloway covered. But I mean, they already fought, obviously, and we saw Ilia was able to find that finish. So even on the feet, he's really good. For Dustin Poirier, I think Ilia has him covered on the feet and even or on the ground, sorry, and even on the feet. I think there's a real chance that Ilia is better. than Poirier, even though both these guys have great boxing. Dan Hooker, Ilia has him covered on the ground. Gamrot, Ilia has him covered on the feet. Paddy, Ilia has him covered on the feet, and so on and so forth. There's just so many different guys in the division, essentially everybody, that I think Ilia would have an advantage over them in one area or the other. And obviously, in certain fights, Ilia will be better than his opponents in both on the ground and the feet, which, if that's the case for a certain fighter, they don't have much of a chance, in my opinion. So, definitely would be interesting to see Ilia Topuria versus Arman Saryukin, but obviously Ilia is going to need to get past Charles Oliveira first, and we'll see how that does play out. Also, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. If Ilia just beats Charles I don't think this is likely, but theoretically, if Ilia beats Charles via a hard-fought decision, that'll be interesting. If Ilia is able to finish Charles like early with a TKO or KO within the first 2 rounds, or even a submission, that would be even more impressive, in my opinion. Within the first 2 rounds, I don't know if there's really anybody that beats Ilia Topuria. And that honestly would include Islam Makhachev. At that point, it would just be hard for me to see anybody beating this guy. Already at this point, I think this guy is really good, but it would be interesting to see what happens. But obviously, as I said, Charles Oliveira is an amazing fighter. He's really good on the feet. He has good techniques on the feet. Ilia is going to be a decent amount shorter than Charles. So maybe those head kicks could be a potential weapon for Oliveira. He has thrown them in the past. He has hurt Beneil Dariush with that head kick in the past, and that could potentially be part of his game plan. May says Charles could hide behind his range. He definitely could. I think he probably would look to do that. Usually we see Charles really aggressive, pressing forward on the feet. But in this specific matchup, I kind of agree with you. I think he's probably going to look to utilize his range a little bit more than he's done in the past. Maybe look to use those long jabs, maybe long right straights, head kicks, as I mentioned. I think he's going to want to do that. And for Charles, I think what his game plan is probably going to be, we'll see what happens on fight night, but what his plan is probably going to be is on the feet, look to stay at range a little bit to the point where you have an advantage. But outside of on the feet staying at range, I think another thing that Charles Oliveira is going to want to do is get all the way in and get on that clinch and go for takedowns on Ilia Topuria. I think he's either going to want this fight on the ground or he's going to want this fight at range. That close boxing range is really where Oliveira is going to want to avoid in this fight, and that's really where I think Ilia Topuria is going to have success and potentially find a finish from there. Joshua says, I think it's going to take someone with dynamic kicking game to beat Ilia. Dynamic kicking game could certainly be interesting. Honestly, I know Ilia is not at 145 anymore. It would be interesting to see how he would fare against Yair Rodriguez. Obviously, he has a dynamic kicking game. The problem with Yair, though, is I think Ilia would be able to get on the inside on the feet. And if he does, I don't think Yair is going to have much of an answer. But even more of a problem for him, even outside of that, is if Ilia is able to get on those legs and find a takedown, I think it's probably over from there. Yair doesn't have much of a game on the ground. He has decent jiu-jitsu for sure. I mean, he has submitted guys in the past. He was able to submit Josh Emmett, but I don't think he'll be able to submit Ilia Topuria. And on the ground, I just think it's such a huge advantage for Ilia Topuria. But either way, it's pointless because Ilia is not at 145 anymore. He's not going to move back down to 145 after putting on the weight. So yeah, I don't even think that would be an answer. But certainly would be interesting to see Ilia fight a guy with dynamic kicking game at 155 or even at 160. At 160, at 170. Brett says, first of all, welcome, Brett. But Brett says Ilia is going to dominate. His boxing reminds me of Tyson. Honestly, pretty good read, to be honest. He does a good job at bobbing and weaving, getting on that inside, landing bombs, landing hooks to the body, hooks to the head, putting combos together really nicely. I would say the best aspect of Ilia's striking game, or really his boxing, is his ability to utilize footwork, get on that inside, as I said. But once he gets there, I think his best ability is putting combos together. Yes, when you watch Ilia, you see the flashy knockouts, you see the flashy power that he has. Obviously, he has a ridiculous amount of power. But something that you don't see, or you see it, but you don't maybe appreciate it as much, at least for some fans watching, at least not everybody, but some fans, is his ability to get on that inside and his ability to put combos together. When you watch him against Volkanovski, the reason why he was able to knock out Volkanovski isn't because he was just throwing huge haymakers. The reason why he was able to knock out Volkanovski is because he was able to get on the inside and put combos together. And when you watch that finishing sequence, Ilia didn't knock out Alexander Volkanovski with the first shot. I think it was a third shot because he was able to put a combo together. I think it was, I could be wrong, but I think it was a left hook up top that didn't land. Then it might have been a hook to the body, and then maybe another right hook to the head after that. And that right hand at the end, that's the one that landed on Volkanovski. I could be wrong in the actual sequence of that, but it was a combo that knocked out Volkanovski. So when you're talking about these top level guys, it's hard to knock these guys out with one singular shot. It's going to take combos being put together. And I think the fact that Ilia is able to do that is a huge reason for why he's been so successful. It's not just the fact that he has a lot of power. So that's a good call, Brett, with his boxing looking potentially like Mike Tyson. What's going on, brother? What's going on? I'm an errand here. I think Charles wins his fight with Ilia. Pretty much every Charles fight from the South now. Always been the underdog and won in exciting fashion. That's definitely true. He has won a lot of fights as an underdog. He was an underdog in the Poirier fight. He was an underdog even in the Gaethje fight. At least I think he was an underdog in the Gaethje fight. Even in the Michael Chandler fight before he got the belt, I believe he was an underdog in that fight as well. So yes, Charles Oliveira has been an underdog in a lot of his fights. And listen, I'm not counting out Oliveira. I am a huge Oliveira fan. Obviously, he is extremely dangerous. He does do a lot of great things out there. On the feet, he's dangerous. He can certainly knock out Ilia. On the ground, he has improved wrestling, and his jiu-jitsu is bar none. He can submit anybody out there. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I'm not completely counting out Oliveira. I do think that he has a chance to pull it off. It just, at this point, I think the danger of Ilia Topuria is immense, especially for a guy like Charles who is a little bit open on the feet. Except Islam. Yeah. Yes, that is true. With Charles using his clinch and kicks, I think he can pull it off. I agree with you. I think that's how he wins. As I said before, I think his game plan is probably going to be look to utilize his range when he's striking. Maybe look to use long jabs. This hasn't really been his MO, though. He usually is a pressure fighter. But I think for this fight against Ilia, he doesn't really want to jump right into the fire with a guy like Topuria. So I think on the feet, he's going to look to utilize his range, maybe long jabs, long right straights, maybe leg kicks, and certainly head kicks, I think could be an advantage or a weapon that Oliveira goes to. But if he's not fighting at range, he needs to get all the way in, get on that clinch, maybe land some knees and elbows in the clinch, or also when he's in that clinch, look for takedowns. As I said, Charles's wrestling has gotten significantly better as his career has progressed, and I think we actually saw that each and every fight that he's in. We really saw an improved wrestling, even in his last fight against Michael Chandler. Yes, Chandler is a little bit washed at this point, but he still has really good wrestling. And Ilia Topuria, or not Ilia Topuria, Charles Oliveira was able to wrestle him for 5 rounds. It was interesting to see that that he wasn't able to find a finish, but still he was able to wrestle quite a bit. And yeah. But by the way, thank you guys so much for all these comments. This is great. John says Ilia also respects guys who have a lot of power. That's why he wasn't able to finish Emmett. But IDK Charles has the chin anymore to sustain a lot of damage. I agree. Yes, I actually completely agree. Because some of the fights that we saw Ilia, jump into the fire, or at least more willing to jump into the fire, was against Max Holloway and was against Volkanovski. And although both of those guys are very skilled, they're also not known to have the most power in the world. So I think he was a lot more comfortable jumping into the fire. But as you said, against Josh Emmett, he was a lot more cautious in that fight. And he really looked to be super technical in that fight, outside of just swinging wild shots. In all of his fights, he's very technical. But when he feels comfortable against a certain opponent, he tends to swing maybe even a little bit bigger on those opponents. And I think we saw that against Bryce Mitchell, even going all the way back to that fight. And as I said, Volkanovski and as well as Max Holloway. But in this fight against Charles, I do think he's probably going to respect the power coming back his way, because Charles does have a lot of power. So we could see him be a little bit more maybe patient, or at least a little bit more cautious of the power coming back his way from Charles. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to land a lot of shots on Charles. And I think eventually, as you even said, John, I don't know if Oliveira is going to be able to sustain all that damage in the end. But yeah, thanks for the comment, by the way. Brett said, "What is your background? Do you box jiu-jitsu?" Currently at this point, I don't actually train at all. I would like to. I would certainly like to train. If I had to train something, I think probably it would be wrestling. It seems to be the best space for MMA. Also, an amazing workout outside of just the actual training part of it. But I don't train at this current moment. I would like to, though. I would definitely like to. Kickboxing is also interesting to me. I mean, even jiu-jitsu is interesting, but as I don't really have a background, I really haven't trained all that much. I mean, I've wrestled here and there, but not any sort of training. So since I don't really have a background, probably it would be the best decision to start off with wrestling. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't train at this current moment. But as I said, I would love to. But what about you, Brett? Do you train at all? And if so, what do you train? Kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai. What's your go-to? But yeah. So should definitely be a really good one. I hate to mention this, but I just want to mention this quickly. If you guys are enjoying the stream and you want to support this channel in any way, obviously, as I said, I'm live streaming a bunch every day during the week. Feel free to drop a super chat. It really does go a long way, helps me out quite a bit. And it would just help fund these live streams, maybe to add some better equipment to the channel, maybe even more live streams, maybe even some more videos. And I really do appreciate it. But obviously, don't feel obligated at all to do that. I just wanted to mention that quickly. But anyways, I also wanted to thank everybody for being here. I really, really do appreciate it. And I really appreciate all the questions. This has been a really, really fun live stream thus far. Not ending it, obviously, but has been a really, really fun live stream. But yeah, getting back into this upcoming weekend, definitely really good fights. I know most of us here think Ilia Topuria is going to win. I know some of us think Charles Oliveira is going to win. Should be a really interesting one, to say the least. But yeah, I think, listen, we'll see what happens on the night. But I think at the very least, we're going to see an interesting fight. I would be very surprised if we see a Charles versus Michael Chandler 2 sort of fight, where it's a little bit of a slower pace, a lot of wrestling, and it goes to the decision. I'd be very surprised if this fight goes to decision. There has been a lot of fights in the past. Actually, this is something that I've noticed. I don't think it's going to be the case for this fight, but one thing that I've noticed is a lot of times going into certain fights where a lot of fans are expecting a finish, sometimes we don't see one, or at least those fights go a little bit longer than we expected. For example, Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje, everybody thought that fight was going to end in a finish. It actually went to decision. So that was an interesting one. Another example, honestly, is Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier. Yes, that was a finish, but it was at the very end of the third round. So those are just two examples. Even Sergey Pavlovich versus Volkov, that was one that a lot of people thought would be a finish. That went to decision. This is a lower level one. But Despain versus I'm forgetting his name, but when Despain went up against that football player, former football player that kept taking him down, I have his face in my mind. I just can't remember his name. A lot of people thought that would be a finish. That turned out to be a decision. So that's one thing I want to touch upon, that a lot of times when fans expect there to be a finish, sometimes we don't see it, or at least we see a fight that's longer than people expect. But as I said, I for this fight, this Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, I would be very surprised if there's not a finish in this fight. And honestly, I'd be very surprised if we make it to the third round. But yeah, Brett says, how about you're surprising everyone with that head movement against Hill? I watched it back and he slipped a lot of punches. Yeah, he did an amazing job, honestly, at slipping punches and countering. Yuri, obviously, throughout his entire career, has been a guy who's been very, very aggressive. Maybe not avoiding the most shots and not the most defensively sound. But in that fight against Jamal Hill, he did do a great job at seeing essentially all the punches coming his way. He slipped almost all the shots that Jamal Hill threw his way, all the jabs, all the left straights, and on almost every single one of those times where he was able to slip a shot, he was able to do a really nice job at countering effectively against Jamal Hill, and obviously was eventually able to find that finish. But definitely a really, really impressive performance for Jamal. And we'll see what's next, or for Yuri, sorry. And we'll see what's next for Yuri Prohaska. It would be interesting to see if he does get the next title shot. I highly doubt it, but it would be very interesting to see a Yuri fight versus Ankalaev. I think Yuri might even have a better chance than Alex Pereira does. This is why MMA math doesn't really work. I think Pereira beats Yuri. If they fought 10 times, I think Pereira beats him most of those times, maybe 8 times or 7 at the very least. But I think Yuri has a better chance against Ankalaev than Pereira does against Ankalaev, which is interesting. So I would like to see that fight get made potentially, but as I said, at this point, I think Pereira is going to get that next shot. He was a champion. He did have a bunch of title defenses under his belt, and he lost a relatively close decision to Ankalaev in his last fight. So I think what he's trying to do at this point is just take some rest, take some time off, refresh his body, and regroup and come back and come in with a new game plan against Ankalaev and try to beat him. And we'll see what happens in that fight. But if Yuri versus Ankalaev ever does get made in the future, it would be very interesting to see how that fight potentially plays out. But yeah, that's another interesting one. I know, or I don't know, but there were some rumors that Yuri was offered a title shot against Ankalaev when it seemed like early on Pereira was declining shots against Ankalaev. But at that time, Yuri was still going to college and he was studying, and he didn't want to accept a fight at this point. But it seems like now he's done. And if he did get another offer for a title shot or maybe even another fight, I think Yuri probably would accept it at this point. But yeah, let's actually go through the rankings a little bit. So potential Yuri fights. Obviously, for Yuri, his next fight could be for the title. As I said, I don't think this is going to happen, but Yuri technically could fight Ankalaev next. I think we could also see a Yuri fight versus Carlos Ulberg. That definitely could be one that's made. Actually, I think that's probably what I would do. Yuri versus Ulberg, #1 contender fight. Whoever wins that gets the next title shot. I think that's probably what I would look to do if I were the UFC. But outside of Ulberg, you can put him up against Rakic, but he already finished Rakic. You can put him up against Khalil Roundtree potentially. Roundtree's coming off an impressive performance, but he did just fight, obviously. Roundtree is currently ranked #7. Yuri's currently ranked #2, but Roundtree is probably going to move up to he's going to be ranked #4 at light heavyweight come tomorrow. They usually update the rankings on Tuesdays. So if I were a UFC matchmaker, I would do Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg, or I would do Yuri Prohaska versus Khalil Roundtree. I think either one of those fights would be good fights to put together. Who do you think Hill should fight next after his recent defeat against Khalil? Who do I think Jamal Hill should fight next? Let's see. Let's look through the rankings a little bit. So Jamal Hill is probably going to move down in the rankings. We'll see how far he moves down. But potential matchups that I would like to see, maybe Jamal Hill versus Rakic. That could be an interesting one, especially it'll be interesting to see how Jamal Hill deals with the leg kicks of a Rakic who has amazing leg kicks. That would be an interesting fight. This would be a really exciting one. I would like to see Jamal Hill maybe even fight a Dominic Reyes. I think that could be a good one. Dom has done a really good job at building his career up again. He's on a little bit of a 3-fight win streak at this point, and it'll be interesting to see him get another higher ranking opponent and see what he can do against a guy like Jamal Hill, who's knocked out a bunch of opponents in the past, who's had a lot of success, against a lot of opponents in the past. And it would be interesting to see if Reyes could once again get a win and continue his win streak and continue his path to a potential title shot once again. So that definitely could be a really interesting one. But yeah, so there's a couple guys that I like, but I think at this point, the fight that I like the most is probably Jamal Hill versus Dominic Reyes. That's what I would personally do. I don't know if Reyes has a fight book next. I don't think he does. But if he's free, that's the fight that I would put together. And even a Jamal Hill versus Rakic, I don't hate that fight either. I know some people on X were talking about Ozdemir versus Jamal Hill. That's also a fun fight. But yeah, so I think there's actually a lot of fun fights. So just to reiterate, Yuri Prohaska versus Carlos Ulberg and Jamal Hill versus Dominic Reyes. Those are the 2 fights I would put together at light heavyweight, but we'll see what happens. What else we got here? But yeah, I think, listen, obviously light heavyweight has been a division that hasn't been all that exciting or all that many contenders. But I think at this point, with the emergence of Khalil Roundtree and how good his performance was against Jamal Hill, I think that just adds another guy to the mix. And I do think light heavyweight does have fun fights. Are they the best fighters in the world? Probably not, but there are a lot of fun fights, and some of these guys are even making improvements to their game. So it would be really interesting to see some of these matchups getting put together and see how these guys perform, obviously. But yeah, what else we got here? Brett says, I would really like to see Rez go on a run. Yeah, me too. I mean, he's already on a 3-fight win streak. I think his next fight is probably going to be a significantly higher ranked opponent than he is right now. Right now, he's number 8. Yeah, so I think Jamal Hill is not out of the question. Who probably after matchmaking Tuesday or after ranking Tuesday, I think Jamal Hill is probably going to be maybe ranked 5 or ranked 6. So yeah, so if Dom does get put up against Jamal Hill, who let's just say is the number 5 ranked contender, at that point, Dom is going to be at least ranked at number 5, and at that point, maybe one more fight, and then you can give him a title shot. Maybe after that, you can even put together Khalil Roundtree versus Dominic Reyes. There's a lot of options you could put together for Dominic Reyes. Obviously, a really exciting fighter, and if he continues on this win streak, there's a lot you can do with him. And obviously, if he's able to fight for a title again, I mean, that would just be amazing for the story of Dominic Reyes to, fight for a title shot, arguably beat John Jones, go on all that loss streak, get knocked out a bunch of times or TKO'd a bunch of times, and now really reinvent his career and go on a little bit of a win streak at this point. I mean, it would be really, really exciting to see, to be completely honest. But yeah. So that would be definitely very interesting. As I said, definitely a lot of interesting fights to make at light heavyweight. But we'll see. I think it all is dependent on when Alex Pereira fights next, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see what that happens. As I said, I think he's going to wait out a little bit. I think he's going to want to give himself some time to rest. But we'll see. Brett says Chris Moutinho said he almost deleted himself after the O'Malley fight. Wow, that's crazy, actually. Yeah, I actually kind of felt bad for Moutinho just because, well, I mean, listen, on one hand, it's an opportunity. Moutinho was re-signed to the UFC, but at the same time, it really felt like the only reason why the UFC brought him back in was for him to take a TKO loss, to be completely honest. Sorry about that. But yeah, I did feel a little bit bad for him that the opponent he came back to was a guy who had so much power and obviously finished him. And as I said, it really did feel like the UFC just brought him back in to get finished. But we'll see where Chris Moutinho goes from here. If he just gets cut right away, I will feel kind of bad for him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the legend, Chris Moutinho. What else we got? Let's do a quick check of X here to see if we got any news coming out. Let's see. Nothing as of yet. Nothing new. How did you decide the name of your channel? So this is well, not really a long story, but this goes back a long time. So when I was in elementary school, or sorry, middle school, um, it just came out randomly. So my friend gave me the nickname Juicy, and it really just stuck. So throughout my whole life, ever since then, everybody just calls me Juicy or Juice, and because of that, that was just my nickname. And I decided to make a YouTube channel a couple years ago. At this point, I think this channel has been open for 3 years. I originally started with Juicy Sports, which is a basketball channel. Then I even at that point, I was watching MMA. I just didn't have an MMA channel. Then a little bit later, I decided to make an MMA channel. So I made this Juicy MMA. And yeah, that's just kind of the brand that I have ever since then, ever since middle school, when I was given that nickname. So that's how I came up with this channel name. John says, what is your favorite fantasy, or what your most favorite fantasy matchup? The fight that I would want to get put together the most, are you talking about current UFC fighters? If it's for current UFC fighters, the fight that I want to see the most is Ilia versus Islam. I know a lot of fans really wanted that. We weren't able to get it. Maybe we will be able to get it. Ilia has shown interest at following Islam and moving up to 170, which would be pretty crazy if he's able to do that. But that's the fight that I wanted to see the most. Obviously, John Jones versus Tom Aspinall would have been a really good one. Would have definitely been very exciting. But for me, I think two top-level guys in Islam and Ilia, obviously the two best fighters in the UFC, at least in my opinion. They're the two best fighters in the UFC. And I would have liked to see them get put together. I know Islam or Ilia would have been a decent amount smaller than Islam, but still, it would have been interesting to see. Ilia kind of just has that early Conor McGregor confidence, and he has a lot of skill, and he's been putting on great performances. So that's the answer for me. John says, no, like anyone in UFC history, like in their primes, Prime Dillashaw versus Sean O'Malley. All time. Let's think. I mean, Prime Dillashaw versus Sean O'Malley would have been a good one. I think I would have leaned with Prime Dillashaw in that fight. Would have been an interesting one. I don't know. That's a good question, John. Let me think. Prime. I don't know. Nothing's coming to the top of my head. I mean, I would like to see like dominant champions in their primes go up against each other. That would be interesting. I don't know though. Let me get back to you on that one. Let me think about it. Prime Dillashaw versus Sean O'Malley would be interesting, but I would lean with Dillashaw in that potential fight. Let me get back to you on that one though, John. I'll think about it a little bit. But really good question though. Brett says he wants Ilia Islam bad. Ngannou versus Aspinall. Yeah, I actually made a video talking about that. First of all, Ilia does want Ngannou, or Ilia versus Ngannou next. He's going to keep moving up. But Ilia does want Islam badly. He followed him to 155. Now it seems like he may follow him to 170. By the way, if Ilia beats Charles, maybe gets one title defense and decides to move up to 170, and at that point, if Islam has the belt and he decides to move up to 185, I don't know what to say. That'd be ridiculous. But obviously that's not going to happen, but it would just be fun theoretically if that did. But yeah, he does want him really badly. Ngannou versus Aspinall, though, I actually made a video talking about this a couple videos ago. If you guys haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But there were some rumors not too long ago of Ngannou potentially coming to the UFC. And in terms of that fight being put together, that's the fight that I really wanted. Obviously, listen, John Jones officially retired like 2 days ago, but I think we all knew he retired like a year ago. Just making us wait all this time. It seems like the only person who thought that John Jones would actually fight again was Dana White. He said that John accepted a fight. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when you listen to everything that John Jones has been saying over the last year or so, he had no interest in fighting anymore. He really didn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. It was pretty clear that this guy was retired. So I thought a perfect fight to replace that huge fight is Ngannou versus Aspinall. Um, you know, if you're losing John Jones versus Tom Aspinall, that's a huge fight. That's a huge fight for the fans that a lot of fans will get excited about. It's a huge fight for the UFC. They'll sell a lot of pay-per-views with a fight like that, and it's also a huge fight um for the fighters. I mean, you're going to make a lot of money in that fight. So going from that amazing fight or like very high profile fight to, let's say, a Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane, that's a huge drop off. Of course, Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane, there's some things to look for, but I think everybody would probably agree that Tom Aspinall is a favorite and most likely will win that fight. So if you're able to put together a Francis Ngannou versus Tom Aspinall, that's a legitimate 50-50 fight, at least in my eyes. And it's also an amazing fight to put together. Francis Ngannou is returning to the UFC. I think a lot of fans are going to tune in for that. Um, and it's also a really easy fight to put. Francis Ngannou was a champion who never lost the belt. Tom Aspinall is now the undisputed champion. Champion versus champion. Those fights always do very well, or at least pay-per-view wise, they perform really well. So I would like to see Dana White, swallow his pride a little bit, swallow his ego. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately, but I would like to see him swallow his pride a little bit and look to sign Francis Ngannou. But as I said, I don't think that's going to happen. Brett says at this point he's running. Yeah, honestly, I would agree. I know the reasoning that Islam gave is, he fought a bunch of 145 pounders, and at this point he wants his chance to move up and to fight an opponent moving up at this point, and he wants his opportunity to be a double champ. But honestly, it does kind of feel like he is running a little bit at this point. John says, what is more likely to happen? Jones versus Ngannou happening outside the UFC, or Dana letting Ngannou back in the UFC to fight Tom Aspinall? That's something I didn't even think about. I guess Jones versus Ngannou could theoretically happen in the PFL, but I don't think it's that likely just because I think John would want to fight Ngannou. I think if the UFC was like, okay, you don't have to fight Aspinall, you can fight Ngannou, I actually think Jones would have fought him. But I don't know if Jones versus Ngannou can happen in the PFL just because when Ngannou fought in the PFL last, it almost tanked the entire company. They're paying this guy so much and they're not really making any money on these events that they're putting together. So just imagine they had to pay a ton for Francis Ngannou and then they have to pay a ton for John Jones to put that fight together. I don't know. I just don't think the PFL could financially afford that. And I think that their company will go under unless they make like a ridiculous amount of money from a pay-per-view like that, which I guess is possible. It's a huge fight. But yeah, I don't know. I would probably say Aspinall versus Ngannou is the more likely outcome, at least for me, or out of those two, it would probably be more likely, at least for me. Because also, even besides the money aspect for Jones versus Ngannou, even if Jones is like, all right, I'll sign with the PFL and fight Ngannou, the UFC, even though Jones retired, he still had a couple more fights left on his deal. So the UFC still has the rights to John Jones, and they would have to approve him going to the PFL, which obviously they would never do. So yeah, I think that's I think if the UFC wasn't involved at all and the money wasn't an issue, I think there's a real chance Jones can go to the PFL and fight Francis Ngannou. But because of all the obstacles, I would say Ngannou versus Aspinall is the most likely fight to happen. Brett says, I think Dana likes money more than he hates Ngannou. I would probably agree. But listen, I think everyone knows that fight is going to sell like a ridiculous amount. But Dana's been asked a bunch of questions about it. He always says when he's asked, do you think Ngannou's going to fight in the UFC? He's always like, probably not. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, if this fight, like if somebody like just put the numbers down for him and showed how much money this a potential card of these two fighting could generate in revenue, maybe you can finally get to Dana. I hope you're right, Brett, but we'll see what happens on that front. And also one other thing I wanted to say, because I heard some people talk about this, Ngannou is signed with the PFL, but as I mentioned before, I think the UFC can still get him because the PFL is paying Ngannou so much money and they're not making any money on Ngannou cards, that it doesn't make financial sense for them. So that's why we're not really seeing Ngannou fight. He fought once in the PFL and he's been signed there for how long? 2 years? He fought one time. I know he boxed a little bit, but at this point, he hasn't done anything. He's been relatively inactive. I don't even remember when his last fight was. Um, so I don't even think the PFL wants to put Ngannou fights together. So I think there's a real chance if the UFC wanted him, they can maybe negotiate with the PFL a little bit and take him over. And I think the PFL will be willing to let Ngannou go, even though he is their biggest star at this point. Just because they can't afford him, the contract he's getting is a lot. Tal says Jones can fight Francis in the PFL once his contract expires, right? Yes, he can, but here's how it works for the UFC, at least to my knowledge. I could be wrong. To my knowledge, I don't think it expires after a certain amount of time. I think how it works is you have, let's say, 3 fights on your deal. And if, let's say, John fought 2 of those fights on his deal and he has 1 fight left, if he retires, it doesn't void that 1 more fight. If he ever wants to fight again in MMA, or even if he wants to go box, he would need to get the approval of the UFC to do that, or he'll just stay retired. I'm almost positive that's how it works. Now, in terms of if John wants to do something else, he'll be able to do that. But in terms of fighting, either boxing or MMA, I believe he needs to get approval. And I don't think there's an expiration to his contract. I think how it works is the number of fights that he needs to have. Shafkat versus Islam. That's an amazing fight. Shafkat has been really interesting because I think he's really good and he's really dominant. The problem is he gets hurt so often, and that's the problem with Shafkat. But Shafkat versus Shafkat versus Islam is a really interesting fight, and it would be really interesting to see if that fight ever does get put together. I mean, it certainly could. If Islam beats JDM, Shafkat could be next. I mean, he was next in line for the title, but he just got hurt and needed surgery. So it's interesting. Does he get an immediate title shot once he gets back and he's healthy? We'll see. Or does he need to fight one more time? We'll see what happens. But Shafkat is a really dangerous fight, super, super aggressive. And Islam is kind of more of a counter striker. So it would be interesting to see what happens in that fight. Prediction-wise, I don't know. That's a tough fight. Shafkat, maybe, because he's going to be a decent amount bigger and he's so aggressive and he has a lot of power and he has good wrestling and he's honestly even decent jiu-jitsu, maybe. I don't know. That's like a 50-50 fight for me, though. But yeah, that would be an amazing one. John says, so what did the PFL do wrong? They just paid Ngannou up front, and Ngannou decided not to fight for them, except for any fight. No, I don't think he. Or well, I'm not actually sure. I don't think he got paid up front though. I think he gets paid per fight. The problem is he's making so much money. So listen, I don't know how much he's making, but let's just assume he's making $20 million a fight or $10 million a fight. Nobody watches the PFL. That's a problem. So when they put together that card, their biggest card of their history, it sold very poorly. I think it sold like 40K or 50K buys. Obviously, there's more money that's generated outside of pay-per-view buys. But if you're generating, let's say 50K, let's say 80K, they did not sell 80K pay-per-views. But let's just say if you're selling 80K pay-per-views, you're not going to cover that much. Like, obviously, you have to pay other fighters on your card as well. But if Ngannou's making $10 million, just him alone, and Renan is making, I don't know, maybe he's making a decent amount as well, because I think that's also a part of Ngannou's contract, that everybody he fights also needs to make a decent contract. You're paying so much to your main event that you have to pay a lot to your main event. Then you even have to pay other fighters on that card. And once you get outside of your expenses that you have to pay out, now you look at your pay-per-views that really didn't sell well whatsoever. And in the arena, yeah, there was people in the arena, but it wasn't even full. Like, the amount of money generated from that Ngannou card was not enough to even break even, not even close to breaking even for the PFL. So they probably lost a good amount of money on that card. And I think that's why they're not eager to put Francis and Ngannou cards together. Honestly, a lot of, like, I know they had a card recently, and maybe they have another card upcoming this Friday. I'm not sure, but the PFL hasn't put on events on for a little bit of time. Outside of this last Friday, they haven't put a card together for a while, and I think it's because possibly Ngannou, or possibly because they don't have enough. Their events are just not generating money. There is no one for Ngannou to fight in the PFL. That's also the other problem. There's literally no one. I think the only guy that they could have put him up against, they already did it against Renan, who had power, and it was like, oh, it would be interesting. Can the power of Renan get to Ngannou? Could he land on Ngannou, and could he potentially find a finish? That was the question. Obviously, it was answered. He couldn't, and yeah, obviously we saw how that panned out. But after that fight, there's really nothing else to put together in the PFL. There's like nobody else that's even somewhat interesting for Ngannou. Everybody else Ngannou would just easily beat. He'll probably just take everybody else down and finish them easily, like he was able to do to Renan. But yeah, there's really not much for Ngannou in the PFL, or really nothing at all in the PFL. So if he stays with the PFL, I think he's just going to box. Or if the UFC wants him, I think the PFL honestly will be willing to let him go. And yeah, the UFC can put together a huge fight. And Ngannou's probably going to make a decent amount of money. Yes, he might not get as much money as maybe he wants. Obviously, Dana is not the most fond of Francis Ngannou. I don't think Dana is going to say, all right, we'll give you whatever you want. He's obviously not going to say that. I'm sure there's going to be stipulations. I'm sure Ngannou is going to have to make exceptions if he wants to fight for the UFC. But still, he's going to make a decent amount of money. He's going to be able to fight legitimate competition again, and he'll be able to build his brand and put together a huge fight, in my opinion. So if I were Ngannou, I would try to go to the UFC, but we'll see what he wants, and we'll see. Who else is on the card Saturday? So top of the ticket, obviously, Islam Ilia. Then we have Kai Kara France versus Pantoja. Then we have Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. Then we have who's the other? Let's see. Well, I know we have Felipe Lima and Peyton Talbot. We also have Benil Dariush and Hinata Moicano. That's the main card. Prelims are Jack Hermanson and Gregory Rodriguez, Hyder Emil, Jose Delgado, Tracy Cortez is on the card, Terrence McKinney versus Barshev. Early prelims is Dumas versus McVeigh, a newcomer. Then you have Deans versus Hines, also a newcomer, Hines is. And then you have Nico Price versus Jacob Smith. That's the entire card this upcoming Saturday. Definitely some good fights. I know some people were complaining that these fights are not pay-per-view level, or they're not necessarily International Fight Week level, but I think there's decent fights in this card. Definitely some fights that matter, and even some of the fights that are unranked or lower ranked, I think they're going to be fun fights. So I think I think it should be a good one overall. Brett said this could be one of the best cards of the year, or better cards of the year. I think it is going to be one of the better cards of the year for sure. Well, first of all, there hasn't been too many great cards so far this year, for one. But for two, I know some people are complaining, but I actually think this is a pretty good card, to be completely honest, from top to bottom. Obviously, the main event is really, really good. But even the main card, I think there's a lot of good fights. Even on the prelims, I think there's some good fights as well. So I do agree with you, Brett, that this could be one of the better cards of the year. Honestly, I think this will probably be the best card of the year thus far. We'll see how the Khamzat Chimaev card looks in the end. That could also be a really good one. We'll see how the New York card looks at the end. If the UFC can somehow pull off a Tom Aspinall versus Francis Ngannou to headline the New York card for the undisputed heavyweight belt, that's an amazing fight, and that would automatically be one of the best cards of the year, most likely. At least, also because the UFC always looks to stack New York cards. So that'd be good. But at least up until this point, I think this is probably going to be the best card of the year, at least on paper, unless I'm forgetting something. But for the most part, in terms of pay-per-view cards, there haven't been amazing cards thus far. But yeah. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. Brett says, what happened to Curtis Blades this last week? Looked like shit. Yeah, I talk about Curtis Blades a lot. I think he has a lot of tools. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think he has a lot of tools. He's fast on the feet. He has good power. He has good technique. He has good wrestling. Even leg kicks are decent. There's a lot to like about Curtis Blades. As I said, his biggest issue is just his IQ, and sometimes he just fights like stupid out there. A lot of the times you saw him lose, he just made bad decisions and got finished. But I think skill for skill, he's really good. This previous week in the first round in his post-fight interview, he did talk about the fact that he popped his MCL in that first round, which could have hindered his performance, or probably did hinder his performance. Whether or not you believe that is up to you, I guess. But I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that he's lying about that. So that could have been part of the reason why his performance was weird. But even besides that, I thought on the feet, even maybe he wasn't as comfortable to throw shots, and maybe that's why. But there was a lot of times he was getting backed up, and when punches were thrown his way, he was just having like a weird reaction to shots. He was ducking down like this and just like almost running out of the way. It was just kind of weird. It was just kind of weird how he's performing. Different performance than he normally does, but he was able to get the win in the end, and I guess at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But definitely not an amazing performance by Curtis Blades. Curtis is aggressive. That's what I like about him. Yeah, he usually is pretty aggressive, and we see that a lot in a lot of his wins. With his striking, with his wrestling, there is a lot of aggression to Curtis Blades' game, and yeah, I mean, as I said, I personally think Curtis Blades is a really good fighter. I think there's a lot of skill to his game. It just, can he put everything together? That's always the question when he goes up against anyone decent. And sometimes he was. I mean, he was able to beat what's his face? Now I'm blanking on his name. He was able to beat Jailton Almeida. Kind of a weird fight, actually. Almeida was throwing him around in the first round, which is kind of crazy to see. And then the second round, he just got stuck in a weird position, and Curtis Blades was just able to find a finish. Weird how that panned out, but still, Curtis was able to beat a pretty good heavyweight. So yeah. Big Ung says Curtis Blades is horrible. I mean, as I said, his IQ is what it is, I guess. But I mean, there's I don't know. There's decent things to him, but yes, his IQ is not great. I would agree with you on that. If you talk about it already, but are you placing any wagers this weekend? I am placing wagers this weekend. I can quickly go through it. So, if you guys are interested, obviously, as I said before, no pressure or anything. Just want to mention this again. If you guys want to, feel free to drop any sort of super chats or anything like that. Obviously, I'll answer all your questions, and I'll shout you out on the page. I'm just trying to do more live streams, make this a living, and just post more videos for you guys. So feel free to do it, but obviously, as I said, no pressure if you don't want to. But anyways, so getting into the bets that I'm taking this weekend, let's just go here. So bets I'm taking, I like Borshev. Terrence McKinney is very physical. He does hit very hard. And he does have skill, I would say. But when you look at the guys that McKinney has beaten, their combined record is not good whatsoever. And I think Borshev is a decent boxer, kickboxer at least. He's not the most physical, and he has gotten knocked out a couple times. But I don't know. I think there's potentially some value in Borshev. So I think there's value there. But this is a light sprinkle. I'm not super confident in Borshev. The next fight that I like is Haider Emil. He's an undefeated fighter, puts combos together really well, hits pretty hard, and Jose Delgado is a good fighter for sure. But I think there's potentially value on Haider Emil. Puts combos together pretty nicely, hits pretty hard, and even has a decent ability to counter wrestle. This is the fight that I really like. I think Jack Hermanson should probably be the favorite, and getting him at plus 158 is good value, at least in my eyes. So this is a bet that I will take a little bit more heavy, actually. So Jack Hermanson, I will take. The reason why I think he should be the favorite is I think he's going to be able to scoot around that octagon really nicely, utilize leg kicks and jabs and right hands. And G-Rod's a guy who does well in brawls, but when guys utilize footwork and move around him, he struggles a little bit. So I'm expecting a decision victory for Jack Hermanson, and I think he should be the favorite. So getting him at plus 158, I think that's really good value. Talbot, Felipe Lima, maybe you can try Talbot, but I actually think Felipe is a really good fighter, so I won't be touching that one. Another bet that I like is Dariush. I think Dariush has struggled a lot with powerful guys, whether you talk about Charles Oliveira or my God, Saryukin. And Saryukin, I just blanked out for a second. Both of those guys are really athletic and really physical and powerful, and I think Dariush struggled with that. But fighting against Moicano, who's not the most athletic guy or the most powerful guy, I think Dariush can have a lot of success. And even if this fight goes to the ground, Dariush has great jiu-jitsu. So I like the value there. I also like the value on Joshua Van. This line flipped. He was actually the underdog for most of the week. So if you got Van at plus money, congrats. But still, even at minus 128, I like the value for Van. So that's potentially another value play that I would take. I do like that. For the co-main, maybe you can put Pantoja in a parlay, but I don't really like his money line. What I do like for the co-main are two separate things. I like Pantoja by submission. I think if this fight goes to the ground, it will be a submission. For Pantoja, his jiu-jitsu is just on another level compared to everybody else, especially compared to Kai Kara-France. But the other thing that I really like is under 4.5 rounds. I think if Pantoja wins, he's going to be landing shots on the feet. And obviously, if the fight goes to the ground, I think it's going to be submission. But if Kai Kara-France wins, he's going to land a huge shot and knock out Pantoja. So I think you're kind of covered for both guys' best chance of victory with this under bet. So I like that as well. And for the main event, there's not too many things I like. It's all just, shots in the dark. Ilia by submission, just a shot in the dark. Charles by TKO, getting a dangerous fighter like Charles at plus 1100 for TKO is always interesting. Although I think Ilia is going to win, I think that this could be value here. The other thing that I kind of like, under 1.5 rounds, I think this is going to be a quick fight relatively. So getting that at plus money is something that I like as well. But yeah, so those are just some of the value that I like. I'll go a little bit more in depth into it later on in the week, Josh, if you're interested. But yeah, that's just a quick rundown of some free picks that I'm giving out to you boys if you guys are interested. That last performance should make you fight down for that. I think you're talking about Curtis Blades. I probably would agree with you. He fought a UFC debuter, and it was a really close fight. I think Curtis might have won that fight, but really close one for sure. And Curtis probably should fight down in the rankings after that, I think. Waldo Casas around 7. Heavyweights looking. I agree. I actually think Waldo's not good at all. I think the only reason why Waldo is ranked number 7 at heavyweight is because he hits hard and he is athletic. But in terms of skill, I don't think there's much skill there. I even thought he lost to Spivak, which says a lot. I know Waldo technically got the win, but I thought Spivak kind of might have won that fight, which tells you a lot about that. John says, what's up, what's up? Borshev on the end of his career. I do agree with that. Borshev is on the end of his career. Yeah. I guess the only reason why I think it's decent is because he's a decent kickboxer. But and I don't think Terrence McKinney's that good, but I wouldn't be surprised if McKinney finds out. Did some hard sparring. Congrats, brother. You kickbox, you box. What do you do, Big Onk? Let's throw this up the screen. Thanks so much, Brett. I really appreciate that. $2 donation from Brett. Wish I could do more. Don't know. Come on. Don't worry. Seriously. I really, really appreciate that, Brett. As I said, it really does mean a lot. I'll give you a little bit of a heart there. I really, really do appreciate it. If you donated 1 cent, I would be really happy with it. Or even if you don't donate, if you're just in the live stream, I would be really happy about it. So seriously, Brett, thanks so much for the donation. I really, really do appreciate it. I will certainly be going live a lot more. As I said, my schedule for live streams is going to be every day during the week at my streaming schedule during the week is every day during the week at 8 p.m. and on weekends I will be streaming on Sundays at 2 p.m. and maybe even doing some watch-alongs on pay-per-views as well, or fight night cards. But yeah, Brett, seriously, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. That was really, really nice of you. But yeah, so those are some cards that we have coming up, or some fights that we have coming up in this most recent card. And yeah, I mean, What do you guys think? What are some of your predictions for this upcoming card? I know a lot of guys here think Ilia is going to beat Charles. Some guys here think Charles is going to win. Let's see. It was. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, but besides that, for the Pantoja fight against KKF, do you guys think Kai Kara is going to land a big shot and win? Do you think Pantoja is going to win? What do you guys think about that one? What do you guys think about the Joshua Van fight versus Royval? I'm leaning with Pantoja in that fight, and I'm leaning with Joshua Van in that fight. What do you guys think? What about the Felipe Lima fight? Do you think Lima is going to be able to beat? What's his face? Is Lima going to be able to beat Peyton Talbot, or do you think Talbot's going to be able to bounce back and find a victory? What do you guys think the rest of this card? But as we talked about a little bit earlier before, I do think this is going to be a really good card overall. There is talent wise when you talk about rankings and obviously champions, former champions, both of these guys, Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, and even we have. And even we have Pantoja, who's obviously also a current champion. So there's that. You also have fun fights coming up, and yeah. Brett says, I think. Sorry, let me just put this here. I think Ilia said something that he wanted to finish Oliveira faster than Islam did. Julie really wants Islam. Yeah, Ilia really does want to just beat everything that Islam does. He wants to move up to another weight class, and obviously he wanted to fight Islam, but he wasn't able to because Islam moved up to 170. But because he wasn't able to do that, I think he wants to get a one up on Islam in some way, and I think his way to do that is to beat what's his face is to beat Charles Oliveira faster than Islam Makhachev was able to. So I honestly, if I had to give my prediction though, I think Ilia wins against Charles. Then I think he's going to want to move up immediately to 170, especially if Islam wins his fight and he wins the belt. But I'm assuming the UFC is going to want to make Ilia defend at least once. But in the end, I think if Islam wins the belt at 170, and if he doesn't retire right away, which I think is a real possibility, but if he doesn't retire right away, I think Ilia is going to do whatever he can to move up to 170, fight Islam, and maybe we'll finally get that fight. I really do. I really do believe that. I'm tripping on my words here, but I really do believe that Ilia is going to do whatever he can to fight Islam before both of their careers are all said and done. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, a lot of steps before we get to that. Ilia does need to beat Charles. Islam does need to beat JDM. Or even if JDM beats Islam, maybe Islam moves back down to 155. We'll see what happens. But one way or the other, I think we may honestly see this fight just because Ilia wants this fight so badly. JDM is the toughest fight so far. I completely agree. I actually think JDM is gonna beat Islam, maybe an unpopular take, but I actually do think he's gonna beat him. I think the boxing is gonna be an issue for Islam. I think the size is gonna be an issue for Islam. A lot of times Islam's bigger than his opponents. This time they're gonna be at the very least the same size, but I think JDM might even be bigger than Islam. And in JDM's last fight, he showed an ability to stop takedowns against Bilal. Yes, Islam is a better wrestler than Bilal, I would say. But the fact that JDM was able to stop takedowns as well as he was able to against Bilal does give me some sort of confidence that he'll be able to stop takedowns against Islam. Because Islam will shoot for takedowns. He definitely will. But I don't think he's going to shoot as often as a guy like Bilal Muhammad will. Now, maybe he'll shoot one takedown, but it'll be a perfectly timed takedown and he'll get it. And then at that point, it doesn't matter how many takedowns he shoots for. But I do believe this fight is going to be on the feet for a decent amount of the time. And on the feet, if JDM's able to get on that inside boxing range, I think it will prove to be a lot of issues for Islam Makhachev. And I think JDM's footwork is good enough to get on that inside, but we'll see what happens. Joshua says, when and where do you think Islam versus JDM will happen? So I think they already have the date. Islam talked about this already. He actually posted on X already about this. When do I think it will happen? What I really want, I don't actually remember exactly what the schedule is. What I would really want is this fight to be in Perth. I know they already went there in February. I don't know if they go there again this year. I'm assuming they don't. But if I were able to make the decisions, I would like this fight to be in Perth in, I don't know, in like September is, well, actually, when is UFC 319? What's the date for that? I think it's August. That's the latest card that we have info on, the latest pay-per-view card that we have info on. Yes, I think so. 319 is August. So yeah, maybe in September UFC. The scheduling is really messed up, to be honest, because UFC 320 was supposed to be in September, but because we lost the card, because we were supposed to be going to Mexico and now it's not happening, they changed it to a fight night in San Antonio. Now we have no pay-per-view in September, but honestly, maybe they add a card in September, make it a pay-per-view, and do JDM versus Islam and put that in Perth. That's what I would like to see. If you do Islam versus JDM and you put it in Abu Dhabi in October, I also don't mind that. Even if you put it in Vegas, I don't mind that. I think this is a fight that will sell anywhere they go. But if I had my way, I would put the fight together in September. But yeah, Brett says, I'll throw your comments back up again. Brett says, is that a waterbed? No, it's not. Regular bed. It's just a regular bed. But yeah, it would be cool to get a waterbed, actually, honestly. Would be like Drake Bell. It was Drake Bell have a waterbed? No. Or maybe in a certain episode in Drake and Josh, I think he had a waterbed. But no, it's not a waterbed. But yeah. Yeah, definitely really good fights upcoming this week. By the way, what do you guys think about Caio Borralho versus Nassourdine Imavov? That was just announced yesterday. Really good fight. Definitely a number one contenders fight. What do you guys think about that? I think it's a really good fight. If I had to, obviously the odds aren't out. At least I don't think they're out. But if I had to guess, I would assume Imavov is going to be the favorite. But I wouldn't count out Caio Borralho. I think he is really good both on the feet as well as on the ground. And I know a lot of people are super, super high on Imavov, and he did beat Israel Adesanya. He was able to finish him. But in my personal opinion, I'm not as high on Borralho on Imavov as most other people are. And I really do think there's a chance that Borralho could win that fight. But what do you guys think? Do you think Borralho is going to win, or do you think Imavov is going to win? And if you do think they're going to win, how do you think they win? For me, I think I do lean Imavov. And if he wins, I think he'll probably win by a decision. It's a 5-round main event. I think he'll probably win by a decision, but I think there's a chance for Borralho. Well, we'll see what happens in that fight. Joshua says, best fight talent-wise at middleweight other than DDP Hamzat. Best fight talent-wise or fighters? Best fight. I'm assuming you mean fight because you said fight. But best fight talent-wise, let's see. At where you say middleweight? At middleweight. Let's see. Best fight at middleweight. Best fight, I think it's the fight that they put together. I think it's Borralho versus Imavov. I think that's the best fight talent-wise outside of the main event, or outside of the title fight, sorry. I mean, there's some other fights you can put together. But I think those are probably the two best fighters at middleweight outside of Dricus and Hamzat. Yeah, I think everybody else is either a little bit too old, like Israel Adesanya, or even a Robert Whittaker, or even Jared Cannonier. And I think some other guys are just not on that level, like a Delitse or Anthony Hernandez or Vittori or even a Brendan Allen or some other guys. DeRitter's an interesting one as well. But I think as I said, Imavov and Borralho is probably the best fight you can put together. Joshua says, I think Caio is going to win that one. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised. As I said, I'm not super high on Imavov. He has been able to get some nice wins throughout his career, but But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Caio was able to win that fight. What's going on, brother? Charles wins by very nice, very nice. But yeah, Charles could win. Charles could certainly win. Thanks for the comment. Um, Brett says my problem with Oliveira is why didn't he finish the subs against Armin? He was showboating before he had the submission. Get this sub first and stick your tongue out. Yeah, I mean in the first round he got really close, but because Armin had those loose shorts, he was able to get out of that submission. That guillotine was really close. I think that was his best shot at actually getting a submission. And at the very end, the Darce choke, it looked to be in, but Armin was doing a pretty good job at defending it. But I agree with you. Charles was celebrating, he was sticking his tongue out or whatever. What Charles really should have done is, I mean, how you finish those Darce chokes is, I mean, obviously you have to have it in, which Charles did. Obviously, I'm not an expert, but from my understanding of watching MMA, is then you need to roll around. Like you can't be north-south position. You need to roll around and get close to his body to actually make that submission a little bit tighter, which he didn't do. So yeah, so potentially celebrating at the very end could have cost him that fight. Charles can very nice. Big Daddy Charles can do whatever he wants. Yeah, I mean, listen, Charles may win the fight. He's very dangerous. He's very good. But we'll see what happens in that fight. Definitely a really interesting one. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens in this fight if he's able to win the fight. But I don't know if Charles is able to win, or even if he doesn't win. I would like to see that Armin rematch, Charles Armin. That fight was so close; it has to be a 5-rounder next time, and I would really like to see it. Says true. Joe Rogan explained that perfectly. Yeah. From my understanding, when you have that Darce choke in, you want to be as close to their body as possible to make it tighter. And Charles was kind of just, he had it in, but he wasn't moving to Armin's body. So I think that the choke wasn't that tight. And also Armin was doing a great job. As it looks weird, but he was completely laying flat on the ground, which gave him a little bit of space and bought him a little bit of time. And that submission attempt didn't start before like 20 or 30 seconds left in the fight. So he was able to just stay prone. Oliveira wasn't really moving to the body, and I don't think that choke was all that tight, even though it looked like it could have been. So I think that's kind of what we saw there. But yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, 1 second, boys. Quick stretch. That's a good question. Prime Connor versus Ilia. This would be an amazing fight. The striking in this fight would be insane. It would be an interesting style clash. The karate style of Connor wanting Ilia to come in so he can, land that big left hand as a counter shot, as well as the boxing style of Ilia Topuria, who's going to want to move forward, who's going to want to pressure Conor McGregor, and he's going to want to get on that inside and land those big shots. Would be very interesting. But overall, I think I lean Ilia, and I'll tell you why. On the feet, I think there's a chance Ilia could actually land on Conor. And if he does, I think he can finish him. I think his power is that great. But when Conor fought Mendes, he got taken down quite a bit. Eventually, I think it was in that 4th round, he was able to get up and find a finish when Mendes was super tired. Chad Mendes was super tired, and he was able to find a finish. But I think if he goes up against a guy like Ilia Topuria, I don't think Ilia would take down Conor and just hold him. I think he will take down Conor, look for submissions, and look for ground and pound shots, and make Conor's life a lot more difficult. So I think the wrestling would be a huge advantage for Ilia. And amazing fight, but I think Ilia would win that fight. But it would be really interesting. Can the karate style of Conor be effective? Can the footwork be effective? Can he land a big left hand on Ilia? If he could, I mean, the power is insane. He can certainly knock out Ilia. So it definitely would be very interesting. Brett says, "Oh, good fight. I pick Ilia." I agree. I would lean Ilia as well, to be honest. I think the wrestling is the differentiating factor, but outside of even just the wrestling, I think even on the feet, like I think is actually good enough to have success against Connor as well. But the karate style would be a new style for Ilia to adapt to, I guess. Um, Joshua says Prime GSP versus DDP without plot armor. GSP without plot armor. No, honestly, that's an interesting fight. I mean, the thing about DDP, he looks so weird when he fights, but he's really good. He's really powerful. Let's just look at his traits outside of the way he does things. He does things weird, but let's talk about just his traits. On the feet, he's actually pretty good. He has decent striking. It looks weird, but he has decent striking. He has good kicks to the legs, body, and head. Dynamic striking on the feet, and also obviously he has really good power on the feet. In terms of his wrestling, I wouldn't say he has the best wrestling in the world, but he can wrestle. And once the fight's on the ground, he has pretty good jiu-jitsu in terms of finding submissions, but he also has a decent ground and pound game as well, as we saw a few times when he fought Robert Whitaker as well. Some other guys, he has good ground and pound. So there's a lot of things to like about DDP. I think I would lean Prime GSP just because, I mean, honestly, both these guys are pretty well-rounded, but I think I lean Prime GSP, but DDP is interesting. I mean, he the way he does things are very weird, as I said, but when you just don't look at the way he does it, just look at the actual skills that he has. Really powerful, super physical, really good cardio on the feet, does things well. Very dynamic striker, decent wrestler. On the ground has good submission skills, good ground and pound. He essentially does everything very well. So there's a lot to like about DDP. But as I said, I think I lean GSP a little bit, but really good fight. Honestly, a question that when you guys asked before, what's a fight that I would love to see? Honestly, Prime GSP versus DDP would have been an amazing fight to put together. That'd be a really, really fun fight. Now, Connor finished chatted in the second round, plus Connor has a 5-in reach advantage, but Connor can't wrestle. Oh yeah, my bad. It was the second round. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I think the karate style of Connor combined with the speed and the power could definitely give issues to Ilia. But I think Ilia can hold his own on the feet. Obviously, he could land a huge shot on the feet. And also the wrestling is really the big thing to me, I think. Prime Connor did a decent job at stopping takedowns at first Khabib early, but once Khabib got that first takedown, it was over from there. Obviously, Khabib's a way better wrestler than Ilia is. At least that's what it seems like. But still, I think Ilia will be able to get takedowns on Connor. And as I said, I think the difference between him and Chad is Chad took him down really just to hold him down and didn't do too much damage. I think Ilia would do a lot of damage on the ground. Also, I mean, Connor is really good off his back, and Ilia does need to worry about some things, elbows coming back his way. But at the end of the day, I think he would cause a lot of damage on the ground and even on the feet. I mean, tough style for Ilia to deal with, but Ilia is an amazing boxer, and I think he'll be able to figure it out. So, yes, I think I would lean with Ilia in that hypothetical. Ilia beats him on the ground. Yes, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that, Brett. DDP beat a whole black belt team 1-by-1. That was impressive. Yes, I actually completely agree. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I mean, as I said, I think people see, the way DDP fights is kind of a weird way. He does things in a different way than most guys. But when you look at each of his individual skills, this guy is really talented. I mean, his jiu-jitsu is not even, something that a lot of people talk about when they talk about DDP. And as Brett just said, he beat a whole team of black belts. This guy is a very accomplished grappler, and he's just very good. He's just very good in all aspects of MMA. So yeah, that's a great point. Which three fighter skill combined to make the GOAT? Which three fighter skill combined to make the GOAT? That's a great question. So I'm assuming when you say three fighter skill, do you mean just like physical stuff, like boxing, or let's say striking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu, like those three? Or do you mean like IQ, cardio, or stuff like that? But if let's start with, I'll answer both questions actually. It's just starting with like boxing, or let's say striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. I'll say for the striking, I will say, is Ilia a crazy answer? Um, maybe, I mean, Prime Connor is also a really good answer. All right, let's say this. Let's say Ilia striking, just because of the power and the way he's able to put combinations together. And I think that striking style works against everybody. So that for striking. For wrestling, I'll say Khabib. And then for jujitsu, I would say um, for jujitsu, I would say Connor. I would say Charles Oliveira. That's the three I would say. Actually, I would say Charles Oliveira, but for jiu-jitsu, another guy that I would definitely put in the contention is Pantoja. I know he's a 125er. People don't think about him that much, but his jiu-jitsu is so legit. It honestly is ridiculous. But nah, full skill level, IQ, and knowledge. So, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to take that off the screen. So for IQ and knowledge, so I would say, well, Ilia also has great IQ. He has a really great process. Um, so I think okay. So not attributing certain fighters to certain skills. I'll just say Ilia. So you can take Ilia's IQ. You can take Ilia's striking. Then I would say, um, you said Hamzat and Mighty Mouse. I would say, okay, I would say Ilia, and I'll say Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse for the skill and also for the IQ. The IQ is through the roof. The way he's able to put game plans together against anyone he fights is honestly incredible. So I'll say them two, and then I would say, and then I guess I would say Khabib still for the wrestling, the dominant wrestling. So you have the striking and confidence of Ilia Topuria. You have the IQ and overall game of Mighty Mouse, and then you have the wrestling of Khabib. Those are the three guys I think I would put together. I mean, this is just me thinking about it quickly. Maybe with more time, I would think of three other guys that maybe would be a better answer. But at this point, those are the three guys I think. Um, but if you gave me more guys, so let's say you gave me four guys, I think I'd do those three, and I would add Marab. The reason why I'll add Marab is the cardio well. I mean, Khabib's cardio is amazing too, though. But Marab's cardio is just another level. But to answer your question, those three guys: Ilia, Mighty Mouse, and Khabib. Those are the three guys, full skill level with everything involved. Um, Says Ilia versus Hamzat versus Mighty Mouse. That's a really good list. Brett says, good night, buddy. Work at you. Peace out, Brett. Once again, seriously, thank you so much for the donation. I really, really appreciate that. That was really, really nice of you. And also, thanks for just joining the stream. I really appreciate you being here. And have a great day at work tomorrow, brother. But yeah, peace out, bro. But yeah, so I think that would be my top 3 GOAT list. But if you, I know we see this a little bit on X a little bit, or at least I have, where they have like one aspect from a fighter and how could you make your best fighter. So IQ from who? So let's say IQ for Mighty Mouse, um, striking of Ilia, let's just say, cardio of Marab, wrestling of Khabib, leg kicks of Alex Pereira, stuff like that. I don't know. You could put like amazing fighters together, build your perfect fighter or best fighter of all time, something like that. I mean, you also said Hamzat. I don't mind that either. Khabib's obviously an extremely dominant wrestler, but the shot of Hamzat, I don't know if this is controversial or not. You guys might not agree with this. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think the shot of Hamzat is at the very least close to Khabib, maybe even better. I mean, the how fast this guy shoots is honestly ridiculous. On top of his actual wrestling ability, is honestly really, really impressive and just really good. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind you saying Hamzat at all. I definitely don't mind you saying Hamzat at all. Um, Sorry, boys, 1 second. Here we go. So let's throw this on the screen. Islam, Khabib, Alex versus John. Oh, wait. Sorry. Islam versus Khabib plus Alex versus John Jones, Connor plus Ilia. Which team wins? So are we doing a one-on-one, or are we doing all these guys out at the same time? So if we do a team, I'm assuming it's 1 by 1. So if we're doing a team, so then it would be. So it would be, I'm assuming Islam versus Ilia, then it would be Khabib versus Connor, and then Alex versus John. So let's take it 1 by 1. Islam versus Ilia, who wins that? It's a tough call. Honestly, for whatever reason, the confidence of Ilia is ridiculous, and also the skill. Ilia wins, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's something. So I would lean with Ilia in that. Khabib versus Connor. I mean, we already saw that. So Khabib, I would say, would win again. And then Alex versus John. I think John would win that. So it would be 2-1 to the right team. Oh, 3v3. Sorry. 3v3. So all of them fighting at the same time. All of them fighting at the same time might eliminate the grappling a little bit. So that's actually interesting. I'll probably say. I mean, no, they could still grapple, but if you take someone down and their opponent jumps on top of you and throws ground and pound, it's almost like a street fight. So the grappling might not be as pronounced. So I would say. I'll say John, Connor, Ilia would win that. Only reason being is I don't think the grappling is going to be the same, or at least as much used, I guess, or used as much. And I think Connor and Ilia are better strikers, well, for sure, than Islam and Khabib. And Pereira is a better striker than John Jones, yes, but I think Connor and Ilia can take on Islam and Khabib in the striking. And then John is a worse striker than Alex for sure, but I think he can survive. And then if it's a 3-on-1 at that point, it's kind of a funny scenario. But if it's a 3-on-1, John, Connor, Ilia versus Alex, I think at that point they could use the wrestling and and also the striking. There'll be a lot of things that Alex would need to worry about. But I think I would lean, I would lean John, Connor, Ilia to answer your question. I think that's where I would lean. It's out in the sun a little bit too much today, boys. Really hot day. I got a little burnt. My back more so. It hurts a little bit. But too white. But yeah, what else we got? What else do we got here? I'm just checking for any new news if we got any. Let's see, boys. Let me just throw this up quickly. Okay. Yeah, so no new news lately. We got a newcomer. What's going on, brother? Thoughts on Orabai? He's a good fighter. I mean, he put on a pretty good performance in his last fight. He had a decent combo where he would throw a left hand and right into a takedown right after, and he was able to be really successful at that, and he was able to find a finish via Kimura on the ground. I think Orabai has skill on the feet. I think he hits pretty hard. He has a decent left hand. But he's not the most technical striker in the world. I think where he's going to have success is the wrestling. I think that's what we saw in his last fight. So I think he's solid. Do I think he's going to be a top 5 contender? I don't really think so. I think he's going to, I mean, it's possible, but I think he needs to make improvements to his striking. But the tools are there. I mean, he has good wrestling. He has decent jiu-jitsu. He has good power, and his striking. I mean, he can strike. He's just not the most technical guy in the world, and obviously, not his last fight, but the fight before that, he took like all time damage in that fight. So we'd like to see him be a little bit more defensively sound. But in this fight, he took no damage. But obviously, he wasn't on the feet all that much. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a decent fighter. Definitely capable of being a ranked guy. I think he probably will be a ranked guy after that performance, unless he is ranked already, and I don't know. I don't think he's ranked though. But yeah, so I think he'll be ranked after that performance. Um, and yeah, that's what I think. But I think decent fighter, definitely ranked top 5. I'm not so sure. I think he's going to need to make some improvements. But yeah, that's what I think about Urabai. But decent fighter for sure. Um, but yeah, just to mention this again. Sorry if this is getting a little bit annoying. But I just wanted to let you guys know to feel free to drop a super chat if you guys want to. Obviously, no pressure. I enjoy your guys' presence just being here, but obviously, super chats help fund the stream, help add maybe better equipment, better quality, better cameras, or whatever. And I would really appreciate it, obviously, but no pressure. If you don't want to, I still appreciate you guys just for being here and giving me questions. This whole live streaming thing has been really, really fun. And yeah, I mean, I just enjoy being here, answering your guys' questions and talking about MMA. So yeah, but anyways, thanks so much, guys. Bro needs to move to 170. Yeah, I think I would agree. Oh, okay. Sorry. But yeah, I think I would agree. I think he should move to 170. Um, but sorry for that. But yeah. But he's a good fighter, as I said. Good wrestling, good power in his hands. Um, but yeah, what are you gonna do? Oh man, sorry, boys. Wait 1 second. I'll be right back. What's going on, fellas? Sorry about that. I'm back. Sorry for a little bit of a wait. But yeah, definitely Urabai is an interesting fighter. But yeah, let's just do another quick check of let's do another quick check of news. Let's see if we got anything. Let's see. Sorry, boys. See if we got anything new. Obviously, we have UFC 317 coming up pretty soon. That's definitely very exciting. A lot of really, really good fights on it. But yeah. Yeah, nothing new came out recently at least. But what do you guys think of the Khalil Roundtree performance? Do you think he's a real contender at light heavyweight? Do you think he could be the champion at light heavyweight, or do you think he just fought Jamal Hill, who wasn't all that great? In my opinion, I kind of think both. I think there's danger to Jamal Hill for sure. He has a lot of power and he can counter a lot of guys very effectively. But if you fight him smart, like Khalil Roundtree was able to do, I think you can beat Jamal Hill. Obviously, as we saw, um, a brawling style versus Jamal Hill. I think Jamal's actually going to win a lot of those fights just because he hits really hard and also he's really durable. He's proven to be really, really durable in this fight against Roundtree as well as his fight against Yuri Prohaska. Although Yuri was able to finish him, it took him a lot of shots to finish him. Jamal Hill is just really, really durable. But as I said, I think Roundtree is a legitimate contender. Could he win the belt? I kind of see that light heavyweight division as Alex Pereira and Ankalaev, honestly, as a class above everybody else. But I think Yuri and Roundtree are in that class right below it, and obviously Roundtree has gotten significantly better from that Alex Pereira fight, and maybe he can get even better. Maybe he can, ascend to that next class. But we'll see what happens for him. So I think he's a legitimate contender for one, and for two, I think I think Jamal Hill is good, but I don't think he's that good. I think he has a lot of power. He has a good ability to counter strike, but his game is relatively simple. And I talk about this actually a lot in my videos. But when you have guys that have a ton of power or something specific within their game that's a natural gift that they have, they tend to rely on that and not look to expand their game. And I think Jamal Hill is a great example. Hill has an amazing power. There's no question about it. His left, if he lands a left hand, he's going to be able to knock out almost anybody. The problem with Jamal Hill, though, is he doesn't have much. He has a jab left straight, which is great, an occasional right hook after that, but his footwork isn't good. Honestly, his technical ability on the feet is just not really good. He has no wrestling. Defensively, he can wrestle a little bit, but offensively, he doesn't really have wrestling. Obviously, doesn't have jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of things that he doesn't have, but he's been able to get by just being super durable and being able to hit really hard. And I think that's kind of the career of Jamal Hill. I think that's what we saw in his ascent when he was knocking out a lot of guys. But when he ran into the Khalil Roundtrees, the Alex Pereiras, even the Yuri Prohaskas that have a little bit more skill probably, he wasn't able to beat those guys because that one counter left hand wasn't really able to land on any one of those three guys that I just mentioned. So, yeah. So I think that's kind of the career of Jamal Hill. Can Jamal still win fights? Yes, I do think so. I think he could still win fights, but is he going to win fights? We'll see. I think it just depends on who he goes up against. If he goes up against a guy that he can land, I mean, we'll see what happens. As I said a little bit before, the matchmaking that I would make for that light heavyweight division would be I would do Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira. I think that rematch has to happen. I think we're going to have to wait a little bit because Pereira is going to want to sit out after being so active. But after that, I would like to see Yuri Prohaska go up against Carlos Ulberg. I think that's a good matchup to put together. I would also like to see Khalil Roundtree go up against maybe a Jan Blachowicz, or not Jan Blachowicz. Oh, well, maybe Jan Blachowicz or maybe a Rakic. There's a couple of guys that I think can contend the top half of that division, and I think you could put some good fights together. And for Jamal Hill, I think a good next fight for him would be against Dominic Reyes. Jamal Hill versus Dominic Reyes is a good fight. I think a winnable one for Jamal Hill, as well as honestly a winnable fight for Dominic Reyes to continue that win streak and maybe to get another title shot in the near future, which would be crazy. MMA says, I think Pereira will go to heavyweight so Roundtree can contend. It's possible. How I personally see it, I wouldn't be shocked if Pereira decides to go to heavyweight. I definitely wouldn't be, especially him taking time off. Maybe he's looking to bulk up. Who knows? But how I personally see it is I think Pereira is going to look to go up against Ankalaev one more time. I think he's going to try to make some adjustments. If he wins, I think he moves up to heavyweight. If he loses, I guess he theoretically still could move up to heavyweight. But I think if he loses, Pereira might retire. That's how I see it. I could be wrong. I don't really want to see Pereira retire. He's been a very exciting champion and a very exciting fighter in the UFC in general. He's saved countless events, being extremely active. But that's kind of how I see it. But of course, I could be wrong. MMA also says Pereira can't handle Unk's defense. He did struggle with the defense. He definitely did. He also struggled with Ankalaev's ability to shoot in for a takedown. Yes, Pereira stopped the takedowns, every one of the takedowns actually, but he wasn't able to get off the fence. As I talk about a lot, it might get annoying if some of you guys watch my live streams a lot, but takedown defense is very important. You see Jose Aldo and some others, amazing takedown defense. You can't take these guys down. And with Pereira, he didn't get taken down in that fight versus Ankalaev. But stopping takedowns is not the end all be all. You also have to get off the cage and off the fence. And I think in that fight, we saw Pereira struggle and not be able to get off that cage. So I think that was an issue for him that he needs to make an adjustment. And also, even as you said, the defense of Ankalaev was an issue for Pereira because Pereira wasn't really able to do what he does normally. Land leg kicks. He wasn't able to land as many leg kicks as I thought, as Ankalaev does struggle a little bit with leg kicks. So the leg kicks weren't as effective for Pereira. The body jab wasn't as effective for Pereira because he was consistently on the retreat, as well as that left hook. Obviously, you can land a left hook even if you're retreating, but it becomes much harder. And the reason why Pereira's left hook is so effective is because it does a lot of power. It's really fast, yes, but also because he sets it up very nicely. And when he's on the retreat, it makes everything so hard to set up. When you're on the front foot, you can set up a lot of things. You can go body jab and maybe right straight up top, and then after that throw a left hook and sneak that left hook in there. But if you're constantly retreating and constantly circling, it becomes very difficult to set things up. And I think that was the issue for Alex Pereira in that fight versus Ankalaev. So I do agree. And also, outside of just backing up, Ankalaev's defense has always been known to be really good. And I think we saw that again in the Ankalaev fight. Probably even making a little bit of improvement in terms of his leg kick defense. He wasn't getting his legs weren't getting kicked out as much as they were in his fight against Jan Blachowicz. So he definitely made the adjustment there. But yeah, that's interesting. Definitely been a really good stream. We've been streaming for a little over 2 hours. This has been great. Talking to the boys, talking about some MMA. Obviously, we have this card coming up on Saturday that I'm really excited for. Should be a really good one. As I said, if you guys weren't here before, I will be streaming every single day during the week, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we'll go as long as we want. And then on weekends, I will be streaming Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then for cards, for pay-per-views, or even for fight night cards, I will be streaming them like watch along live for certain cards with you guys. But I'll let you know that the week of if I'm going to do it or if I'm not. For this upcoming week, I will be probably doing the prelims for UFC 317, watching them live along with you guys, talking about some, fights as they happen, talking about what I think, who won specific rounds, just interacting and doing a little bit of a fight companion with you guys. So that would certainly be fun. For the main card, unfortunately, I will not be streaming, but after that card is over, I think I'm probably going to jump on a stream and do a little bit of an instant reaction after that card is over. So definitely a lot of streams that are yet to come. A lot of streams that I'm excited about, and a lot of stuff to talk about for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. But I think I might look to end the stream. We've been going, as I said, for a little bit over 2 hours. It's been a really fun stream, really fun to interact with all you boys. But yeah. If you guys don't have any other questions, that's been the stream. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks so much for everyone for being here. Also, another thank you to Brett. I don't know if he's in the live stream right now. I don't think so. But an extra thank you for Brett for the super chat. It really does mean a lot. It really does go a long way. And yeah, obviously anything is really nice and really amazing. And also, as I said, everybody that's in the stream, I really appreciate you for being here. So so peace out, boys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to be there. And also YouTube video on Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. But yeah, peace out, boys. Hope you have a great rest of your night.